Hey there. Welcome to episode 3 of the Wonderfully Knit podcast. If you're just joining us, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. For those of you who are just joining us, just FYI, this is a podcast, video, vlog kind of journal for me to keep up both with the projects that I'm working on that are craftual in nature, of various kinds of crafts. We're going to talk about very different things today. And also as kind of a touch point for keeping up with my pre-med sort of journey. I try to be a resource in that way. Some of the things are going to be fairly obvious to people who are pre-meds or pre-professional medical folks, as well as medical folks in general. I try to be a bit of a resource and talk about something regarding that every flippin' day, or every flippin' episode rather. I do actually try to talk about it every day because that kind of keeps it running for me. But anyway, so for the most part, what we're going to talk about is going to be crafts and things that I have done this week. My crafts personally vary anywhere from knitting to sewing to some other stuff that we're going to talk about some this week, actually. So today's post, oh, right, and the links. Okay, so for the most part, my group for this website, or for this podcast, is going to be on Ravelry. We can be found by going to the Groups tab on Ravelry.com after you sign in, and searching for Wonderfully Knit Podcast. Those are 3 separate words. You should be able to find us. And then the show notes can be found both there in the episode thread for each individual episode. I start a new episode thread. And also at wonderfullyknitpodcast.blogspot.com. Let me make sure. wonderfullyknitpodcast.blogspot.com is indeed the address where you can find both a posting of the video and the show notes for the video. I try to put everything that I talk about into the podcast, into the show notes, so that perhaps in the future, provided that this continues going, you can always search back through that using Google search or what have you. Okay, so let's get on and get started. Pre-med student stuff, and again, this is one of those things that translates across every concentration. It doesn't matter if you're pre-vet or pre-dental assistant. You have to have a support system. Now, support systems vary, of course. They vary according to the people in your life and where your life is and all of this stuff. You have to have it. A support system can also be the ability to spend money, in all honesty. So let's say, and there's kind of a balance in between there. So what I'm talking about. So I have a husband and I have 2 daughters. We had to have childcare when I went back to school. So that had to be part of our support system to be present, or at least arranged for. And then, of course, during the school, I'm really focused in getting the best possible grade, and that involves study, and it involves a lot of study because, of course, pre-med is like that, and medical school is even more like that. So, as a result, I'm not as available to cook and take care of housekeeping and childcare like I am at other times when I'm not doing this concentration. So what happens during those times is that we spend a lot of time with my husband cooking and taking care of the girls and helping Rose with her homework. Rose is my youngest, and my eldest with homework too, as that presents itself. And on occasion, that means because life is this way, it means that on occasion that we are eating more pre-prepared meals. So like ordering some pizza or takeout or something, or saying, no, screw this, we're going to go to the restaurant and eat at the restaurant so we don't even have to take care of dishes afterward. So, that can be part of your support system. On top of that, there's the emotional support system. You have to have it. We are humans, last I checked, and we are social beasts. We have to have a support system in place emotionally. These can range from, of course, family to friends who are family, and family who are friends. Have them in place. Let them know what's going on. Consult with them. Listen to them. Take time for them. We talk about, one of the constant themes is always life and work balance. And it's not to be ignored. You have to understand that right now it is completely reasonable for you to expect your family and friends to allow you to concentrate on this school thing you're doing, because you have to have that much time spent. But at the same time, what you have to do when you have the time for them is to give them that time, or else they might not be there as much. And yeah, so I try to keep that in mind, especially around exam times. I know I get really, really harried and hurried and busy and hyper focused. And my kids have, and my husband have come to understand that. My family expects that of me, in all honesty, my more extended family. And nobody calls me that week. Nobody I warn people. I say, this is how this is going to be. And during that week, I am aware in the back of my head that, okay, this week, all of the balance of what my family is doing is on me this week. And that's fabulous, because it means that I have the ability to do that. But it also means that I have the obligation to rebalance after that time is over. So understand that, you both need the support system, and you need to care for your support system. It doesn't get easier to do after you get into med school. It gets more challenging to do, but it gets more worthy to do too. I have a cousin of my husband's who is in pharmacy school right now, and her fiance is in med school. They have just finished year 1 of their separate schools, and they're in the same school, but they are in separate schools within the same school at the same locale. Fortunately for them, that worked out beautifully, and I'm so happy for them that did. And I've watched them too, and they are one another's support system. They very graciously let me stay there when I was interviewing this past November at a school where they are at. It was obvious that they were one another's support system. They bounced ideas off of one another. They listened to one another. They allowed one another the space to be and do the things that they had to do to be successful. And I tried not to intrude on that too much. And thanks again, Lauren and fiance. So, okay, that's the pre-med section. If you want to talk about your support system, that is super welcome. I would love to see some conversation go on about that on either the blog spot or on Ravelry at the group. It's near and dear to my heart. Networking and the support system that you have in place are one of the things that I will expound on for quite a long time. And I've already gone on for like 8 minutes here now. Because I feel they're super important for any pre-med. If you've got the chops to do the work, you have to have the chops to recognize your support. So, all right, on to projects. Stash. Wah, wah. No stash this week. So, sad trombone rather. And I have really not added to my stash this week. I intend to do so shortly. Actually, come to think of it, I kind of have. I had a little trip to Hobby Lobby. I just remembered this. I picked up some ribbon. I picked up some beads for a project. I'm planning on doing the Fabergé. A friend of mine, Jill, who's Blue U on, as in a female sheep who is blue. On Rav, sent me as a present the pattern for Fabergé, which is a lovely scarf, and I think I'm going to make that up starting here shortly. And I picked up these beads, a couple of tubes of these beads while I was there to do that. But what I was really there for, what I was quite happy to be there for and to pick up, were a couple of different things. Number one is just some of that. Like, this is some linen ribbon, and this is some poly ribbon that I just like the design of. It kind of looks like it's been tablet woven, even though probably hasn't. Bridget Heddle. Ooh, I sneeze. Okay, and then I also picked up these. Now you see this one is broken, which is why they were on clearance. Yes, we love the clearance prices. And so these are glass lampwork beads, and they're beautiful. I love them to death. I'm not sure how I'm going to combine all of them. But they were on clearance and beautiful. And so I took them home with them. And actually, I really like this. In fact, the fact that this one is broken doesn't do any bad for me on this purchase, because it gives me an odd number of focal kind of beads and I prefer odd numbers of those because I'm like that. It's all right. So I did actually have some stash enhancement, just not in yarn. So not womp womp. The anti-womp womp. And so on to my projects. So you hear a lot of plastic right now. Give me a second. So, all right. You see that beautiful thing? That loveliness with that lovely brown crust. And if you had smell-o-vision. Good stuff. So I have been working since the latter third of last year. I've been messing around with sourdough. I got interested in it late October, and I managed to get some starter started, and I also acquired some starter. You can buy starter, have it shipped to you, and it will revive nicely because that is the nature of starter. You follow some basic directions. So if you're interested in sourdough, do the heck out of it. It's super simple. And I really endorse the heck out of it. The flavor is really great. You might find, if you have been using instant yeast before, you might find that you have to recalibrate. I certainly have. I've made bread since before my husband and I were married. I really like making bread. For a while I couldn't, for various reasons, because I like to breathe. I've since gotten allergy shots, and it might be the allergy shots, it might just be whatever. But now I really don't have much of a problem with working with yeast so much. And now I can brew again. Actually, I want to start another Perry here soon. So, Perry is like a pear version of a hard cider. So where hard cider is typically apple juice, Perry is pears. And let's see, so bread was delicious. Oh my gosh, it's delicious. Okay, so what I've been trying to do, when I was recalibrating, what happened is I started with the starter from kingarthurflour.com. I'll link it in those show notes. So I started with some starter from kingarthurflour.com, and I started using their method. Well, it seemed odd to me that you still had to use instant yeast with it, and this was supposed to be sourdough. It wasn't that it wasn't tasty, it was a little denser than my family really likes, but and it also wasn't very sourdough-y. Like, the flavor just wasn't very sourdough-y. Why have a starter and still have yeast? And I had many questions, so I went hunting back on the internet after I started working with it. I was like, the idea here is that you can use just starter as your yeast. You don't have to buy or use instant yeast, or fast rising yeast, or whatever you want to call it. And so I went searching, and sure enough, found out that what I was doing was not exactly full sourdough. So that's a whole other journey. And I have been doing just sourdough starter now for about a month, and the recalibration was fairly harsh. I got a couple of loaves that my family's like, yeah, we can totally eat this because we love you. No. No. Those loaves, my family does love me. Nobody should love me that much. And so we ended up throwing those loaves out. Happily, I right after that, I found a really good method with a really good balance of stuff, a really good balance of ingredients. And it worked out. I'll put some links in the show notes. knowing that this is not necessarily a baking podcast. Some things I'll probably do this time because I'm going to make some up tomorrow, actually. Knowing that this is a good method that worked out, I've made some notes. I want to do it again a couple of times, and then I'll see if I can't post the recipe. I'll post it on both the Blogspot and the and to the Rev group in case anybody's interested. Let me know. Are you a baker? Do you bake things? Do you cook things? I love food. Man, I did not get this felt figure by passing up some tasty bread. This bread turned out super, super well. It's very light and very soft. It's a proper sandwich loaf. It's somewhere in between a sourdough and a brioche. It's very tender. Anyway, so tell me, are you a baker? Do you put food in your face? I put food in my face. Go talk about it on the group. Tell me about it. Tell me about it. What's your favorite sourdough recipe? I don't care what kind of sourdough recipes it is. If it turns out well for you, you go comment and let me know because I want to hear about that. I love me some sourdough. All right. And socks. So I've been knitting this week. That is to say I have been breathing this week. And actually, matter of fact, this weekend we had sock club. It was very great. I had a nice time. I needed badly to get out of the house and talk with my knitting friends, and I did so. I ran across actually a couple of other podcasters who live in my area. Bless them. Caffeinated Knitting, here, the coffee, yay. Once again, Wonderfully Knit Podcast endorses coffee. Coffee. Drink it today. And, so a couple of other podcasters, they have a knitting and spinning oriented web podcast, and they can be found at Caffeinated Knitting podcast with Caffeinated Gert and Crafty Allie, Allie. Again, I'll put a link in the podcast notes to both their YouTube and to their Revelry group and their Blogspot. They do like me. They have a Blogspot and a Rav group. And, of course, the YouTube channel where they post their videos. So check them out. They're a fun, companionable kind of thing. I've known Caffeinated Gert for a long time now. Well, not a long time, several years now. She's good folks. We like her. So, knitting for this week. Actually, this is the project that I took with me to work on at Sock Club. And it is a sock. Let me see. There you go. You can see this nice pattern, twisted stitch, kind of Bavarian-ish looking, with this this being the back of the sock. I kind of like this. This hasn't been blocked yet, and I expect that it will be quite handsome when it's done. These are for me. I wanted some knit socks that I could wear to work that would be attractive still and visually interesting, but of a color that would be also professional. This is for wearing kind of in the cold months when you're in like pantsuits and things, and maybe some flats, some appropriate flats for this, of course. I've already finished that one sock. I finished that one sock over the weekend and got started on. I've already cast on the second sock and started into the cuff, because that's how we avoid second sock syndrome in this house. We just immediately cast on for sock number 2. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Second sock syndrome is the symptom by which, or the symptoms, the differential from ennui is that you go start other stuff. But you cannot bring yourself to somehow cast on that second sock. You finish the one sock. You like the sock pattern just fine. Nothing's wrong with it. But for some reason, you never start the second sock. And so that sock sits there, forlorn, unworn, unadmired, in your memory, in your works in progress bin, never getting anywhere. Second sock syndrome. Avoid it today. Anyway, so the way that I avoid it is by casting on immediately. Knitting a few stitches right now as I talk. And really, in the realm of knitting, that's been it. I have not spun this week because I have been working on another project. I have an event this weekend that I'm attending with my husband. My birthday is tomorrow, and so this is an event that always happens on my birthday, and I love it to bits, and it's a thing I go and do. Oh, 1 second. Yes. And every year since, oh gosh, 2003? No, 2002, I believe. Anyway, so I go every year, and it's an SCA event in the Southeast. It's called Menhir. I attend every year that I can, because it's my birthday event, and I like it. And I have some projects that I'm working on for that. So, I'm going to grab it. So, I'm not going to be able to show these on camera. They're too large. But maybe I can get a picture and post it to the group and to the blog spot. Or maybe throw one up next week in the video. So, this is more of that blue fabric, like the sleeve that I was making last week. This is the inside. I've had it hanging out so that the hem, so that if the hem is going to stretch, it will do as much of that stretching, before I sew the hem as possible. Because it's very frustrating when your hems stretch after you've sewn the hem. And then, keep that with that. The sleeves aren't on yet. I'm going to be doing that this afternoon. And then there's this, which is a lovely black and white. I used to sell this, actually. And stuff. And then I've also been doing a little bit of embroidery. You see that? It's basically just a herringbone stitch, or a catch stitch. Depending on your function. And I will show you more of that next week, because for one thing it'll be done, and for another thing I'll have already worn it, and hopefully I will grab some pictures of that. There's a minor surprise involved in that one for people who know me. I'll put a link to the SCA as well in the podcast notes, so that you can get an idea of what it is we generally do. In a lot of ways, we're Middle Ages and Renaissance reenactment. A lot of people go, oh, so like a Ren Fair? Kind of, except you kind of go to a Ren Fair to be, entertained. You go to watch the shows and things, and we do things to entertain ourselves. And we have a much wider span of history that we cover. So, so that's really about it. So, a little more stash this week than I really thought when I first even hit record this time. And some projects. I'm going to be doing some beading projects, of course, with those beads that I grabbed. And I think that's really about it, except for more coffee. Coffee is great. So this week it really seems as though I haven't done as much as in previous weeks, but the fact is that I'm sewing all of that by hand. I'm not even using my sewing machine, which you can see possibly behind me. That's it right there. That's it right there. I'm going to sneeze again. Take your allergy pills, kids. Maybe I won't sneeze again. Woo! Yeah, take your allergy pills before you start your podcast, y'all. Anyway, so that's my sewing machine, and she's very nice. She's very nice, but I'm sewing all of that entirely by hand. For various reasons. Number one, the sewing machine was invented in the 19th century. There was a rough invention that happened before then, but it was reinvented and popularized in the 19th century. If I have my history on that correct. And my stuff is, the SCA stops at 1600 or so. It can vary any given year. Just a little bit, though, not a whole lot. Oh, sorry. Woo. So that has taken up a lot of my project time and working time this week. I actually ended up having to undo some seams, which is always great. On the lining, when I found out that I cut that black and white piece, there's a lining for it, and I sewed the lining up first, and then I went to try the lining on to check some fit issues. I couldn't even get it on because I had managed to make it about 7 or 8 inches too narrow in circumference just in general, just straight up and down. Happily, I was able to add the amount of fabric that I needed from some leftover cut parts. Leftover cut parts of lining, and ended up having to do the same for the outer layer, but the line should be fine. I have been sewing for quite a long time. I don't understand how I made that mistake, except that it was very late and I was very distracted. So try not to do things like cut fabric you don't have a lot of when it's really, really late and you're really distracted and you're laughing watching Galavant. Just, maybe occasionally sing along too because, hey, it's fun. Yeah, I'm going to blame it on Galavant. We'll talk to y'all later.